Hi, yes, normal service has been resumed on the hat front, and the whole hat. So don't worry about that. Oh, and look, I'm wearing the onesie I got for Christmas. Thanks, Mum. I wish I was joking. Right, everyone. Picture yourself as a picture yourself as a girl in Somalia who's about to get her labia cut out. Imagine pleading with the local authorities responsible for this operation. Imagine saying, "This is the removal of what should be my inalienable bodily autonomy. You are violating my human rights." Imagine the authorities responding to your plea with something along the lines of, "Do you have any idea what they do to men in North Korea? They treat them like dogs. Don't use your ignorance to distract us from the real issues." Now that sounds as inhumane as it does so surreal it's almost neo-cubist. But if a newborn baby boy happens to be born with the power of speech, and indeed lucidity, he might look up at the surgeon about to perform his circumcision, as one of his first experiences on this earth, and deliver the exact same plea as the Somalian girl. "This is the removal of what should be my inalienable bodily autonomy. You are violating my human rights." And the response he would get would be, "Did you know? In some isolated pockets of the world, they remove girl parts. It's just awful. So don't try and minimize the suffering of women, all right? Be thankful we live in a progressive society. Snip." Really, folks, when you're talking about the human rights violations that feminists and other more subtle gynocentrists have deliberately exacted and perpetuated in the entire so-called civilized world, including this country, do beware of the people who, when you bring this up, would suddenly rather talk about the so-called developing world. Because, for one thing, they're changing the subject from something we at least have a semblance of control over to something geographically and or culturally distant over which we have little or no understanding or control. That is not just changing the subject. That's changing the subject to something necessarily unconnected and intrinsically murky and unfalsifiable. And for another thing, there you go. They invariably don't know what the fuck they're talking about, and they've already grossly misapprehended the numbers. I'll give you the Middle East. I'll even give you Africa. But no, don't ever forget that India and China are not in your bag of tricks, ducky. They're in mine. Yes, they treat women badly, but please do some research on just how badly they treat their men in India and China. They're the communist stroke quasi-assimilist powerhouses on the engine floor of the pure misandry behemoth, while Europe and North America, the bloated twin towers of the feminist empire, are, I'm sure you'll agree, pulling the strings of international power politics. That rickety pirate ship of ragamuffin trans-Saharan Middle Eastern religious kooks is not the biggest problem, darling. It really isn't. It's 2 billion, at the most, extremely poor people. And they treat women badly because they can't afford to treat anyone not badly. I'm talking about the other 5 billion poor to stupidly wealthy people and the ideological bullshit they used and are still using to get that way. Sex slavery of women is considered culturally acceptable up until it is no longer necessary. The agricultural and industrial revolutions eventually made it no longer necessary or indeed morally acceptable. While on the other hand, labor slavery of men is also considered culturally acceptable up until it's no longer necessary. It has simply never occurred to any country, any government, any conglomeration of peoples, ever, that it is not necessary to enslave men. Because that is the filthy, harrowing truth about this global civilization, this terraforming of the planet into brightly lit stickle bricks stretching from horizon to horizon. It all got here through the forced labour of men. And why won't it stop? This mindless cancerous growth by slavery? Because of what happens when you try to talk people out of it. Because of what ideology does. Because of what ideologues do. They give themselves license to say malicious, bigoted, hysterical bullshit, and then ignore and or get personally offended by whatever dissenting opinion is offered in response. If I lived in an Islamic or animist culture, I might be talking to them about their ideological human rights violations against women, for instance. And I'd hear the exact same shit from them that I hear from Western feminists when they attempt to defend their ideological human rights violations. The systematic stripping of the medical, custodial, reproductive and autonomic human rights of men. They'd say, the Muslims and animists would say, no, that kind of equality is impossible, and our people don't want it. You don't understand, this is how we hold our society together. And then I'd say, no, it isn't, it's how you fuck your society up. And then they'd say, we don't like your tone. Why do you hate us so much? You just want to kill people. So bollocks to you. Actual bollocks to actual you. Here, have my bollocks. They're in your face right now. Chop the cunts off, float them in your fucking drink. I'm done with you people. At least Muslims and animists are consistent. They treat all their people like vermin, men and women alike. You pseudo-secular Western bastards live in perpetual hypocrisy, obliviously treating half your people like vermin, while you crusade across the world, slaughtering millions under this protracted war cry that no country should treat half their people like vermin. When the countries in question, the countries you're carpet bombing, are in fact the only countries left still treating both genders like vermin. But half of it is the half that is, always has been, and always will be invisible to you. Because you've had your boundaries violated and distorted by cynical childhood indoctrination that you cannot ever reasonably account for when challenged. You are a brainwashed gender ideologue, and you probably always will be. And then to top it all off, you hold smug, self-righteous protests against the very wars started by the very threat narratives you're spreading. You are the numbskulls in the head of the monster, making sure it's looking away and whistling while its back leg surreptitiously kicks the living shit out of its unarmed prey. My dick hurts because of you. It actually hurts. Goodbye and fuck off.